Okay, I just sent it. It's in the first message in that string.
All right, got it. Got it. Alrighty. All right, guys. Well, let me start by thanking all of you guys for joining us this afternoon. I think as we continue to talk about training and development, normally we've been focusing on our volunteer piece. And one of the things that we are starting to obviously realize is that the strength of our program begins with our staff and our ability to train our staff. And you guys being identified as facilitators from around the state, you guys are really at the center of the quality of our advocacy. You guys are at the center of the strength of our program because you ultimately are going to mold and are going to shape the quality of the volunteer experience. You're going to help us get them ready to be child advocates, and you're going to ultimately help us make sure that our children's needs are met and that we are doing what is best for their interest. And also, as a side note of that, obviously, the better prepared our volunteers are, the better our chances are to keep them for the long run. So ultimately, your efforts and the quality of the training that you're providing for our volunteers comes back around and is going to help us with other facets like volunteer retention, obviously the quality of the advocacy, and so on and so forth. So I think a few months back, and we sent different surveys out, and one of the things that we heard from you guys was this desire to get some training from the state office and to help you maybe develop some of those facilitating skills that are so critical to the training and to the development of our volunteers. And like I said, I mean, one of the things that we have acknowledged is the fact that we have to do a better job training our staff, not just our volunteers, and that seems to be a big part of the focus. But we also need to look at what we're doing for our staff. As you guys have heard, hopefully by now, we are embarked in this long-range project called I'm for the Child Academy. And that is really going to be the basis of all of our training. And at the core of that is our state office training team, which is made up of really the core team is Mary Kay McAnally, who is obviously on this call, Patty Walker, who used to be circuit director in Broward County. Then she went to the 19th Circuit for a little while, and obviously she's been an integral part of this team. And then you also have Patty Profiter, who is an attorney in the training team, and she is the person that coordinates and delivers the new attorney training. I know in some of the circuits when she's been coming around, she has been inviting some of our staff to come in. I know we've had some volunteers attend some of the trainings as well. And then, of course, we have Calvin Martin on this webinar. He is our diversity inclusion advocacy and inclusion director. So, you've got a very good, solid team. Calvin used to be regional for the North region, and then for the Northeast region before becoming an integral part of our training team. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and, there's others there, Sonia and others that I'm not, going to go over the whole entire team, but chances are you'll be working with them at some point, depending on what we've got going on. So if you want to change, Mary Kay, I wanted to give you an overview of the I'm for the Child Academy. And talk a little bit about the things that we are going to be doing as part of the I'm for the Child Academy. All right, there you go. The first priority that we have is going to be creating an online platform for all of our volunteers, so that basically all of the volunteer training that we do can be delivered via internet, via the web. This should streamline some of the things that we are doing. Ultimately, what we're looking at doing is basically once we revamp the volunteer training, we're going to have it delivered 4 different ways. One of them is going to allow the circus to basically have all 30 hours classroom type style, like we used to do years ago. The second way that we're going to be doing it is basically doing what we're doing right now with the 3 phases, where you're going to have, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. The third way that we're going to be looking at doing this is going to be doing it as a webinar, so that, for example, in some of the circuits where we have rural areas and you may get 1 or 2 volunteers at a time, rather than have the circuit spend a lot of time training 1 or 2 people, we're going to try to pull all those participants together and have a webinar online where we can have a facilitator and walk maybe a group of 10, 15 volunteers at the same time through the web. And then obviously the new way, which is going to be the online way. This is something that Alan has identified as a big priority, and I think we all have echoed that we want to be able, when somebody calls us and they want to start volunteer with the program, we want to be able to say to them, go ahead, jump on this website and start your training. To that extent, we've started to work on the platform that is going to be hosting all of our trainings. It's kind of a neat way. It's going to be on the cloud, and it's going to track the progress that our volunteers are having, the training hours, and it's going to be 74 for our staff as well. And that brings me to goal number 2 right across the top, which is improve the advocacy through evidence-based training of all of our staff and volunteers. So we're going to be focusing a lot on developing our trainings and using evidence-based materials, so that we're not just arbitrarily putting stuff together, but rather all of it is going to have been tested. We're going to be using a lot of the materials from National CASA. We're going to be adding some extra stuff and modifying some of the things that the CASA is going to do for us, that the CASA has put together for us, I mean. Along those lines, under key tasks, one of the biggest things that we're going to be looking at is developing a CAM certification. And I know that's going to be a little while into the future. We've talked about doing that in the past, and always it's been an issue of funding and other things. We really believe that we can now get this off the ground, particularly with the emphasis on training that our program is putting in, the investment that we're going to be committing ourselves to do for our staff. Along those lines, obviously, we want to use our data more effective. We've created a curriculum committee to help us, guide us on all of this, with some of the circuit directors involved. Other community partners are going to be involved in that curriculum committee. So we've got a lot of moving pieces. Some of the challenges, I think, is we got to be cognizant of the fact that while training is good, we don't want to overwhelm our staff with too much training. So to that extent, one of the things that we've decided is kind of a lot of the trainings that we're going to be doing, while we're going to be doing more of it, a lot of it is going to be optional, and it's going to be targeted more to subjects. So if you're having an issue with educational advocacy, for example, that's one that we've already started. Our volunteers are going to be able to go, our staff is going to be able to go and attend those specific webinars. Nobody's being required to attend. It's a matter that if you have a case that has complex educational issues, that is a tool for you. We're going to be looking at doing the same with other topics, not just educational advocacy. And along the lines with all this, the idea is that we want to try to have reach out to experts in the community. We don't need to drive everything. We don't need to develop every single topic. We are going to be reaching out to FSU. We're going to be reaching out to DCF, to some of the local nonprofits within our communities, and I don't just mean like our partner agencies. I mean like children's advocacy centers, substance abuse providers, and things like that throughout the various communities in Florida. So it is really going to be a partnership with a lot of our stakeholders in order for us to do this and do this successfully. So I just wanted to give you guys an overview of what we're doing with the For the Child Academy. And if you guys, if you guys have any questions on it, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to ask. Anything that I may have missed, Mary Kay, or anyone else?
No, I think that was really the big piece on the I Am for the Child Academy, especially. I'm excited about it. So no, I think you covered it, Frank.
Okay, so with that being said, I really want to turn it over to the rest of the team. I know one of the things that we did, and I mentioned earlier, surveys. Patty Walker is going to walk you through that survey, and Mary Kay is going to be walking us through the CASA curriculum. We did an evaluation of the CASA curriculum and where we are with it, and some of the challenges that we would have if we were to adopt that curriculum. So Mary Kay is going to guide us through that. Then Calvin is going to start doing, hopefully give you an overview of what we're looking at doing with these calls into the future, which is enhance your facilitating skills. Calvin has a lot of experience doing this with National CASA, the Knowing Who You Are training, and others that he's facilitated in the past. So we tapped into him to help us develop a curriculum for you guys as we move forward and help you improve your abilities as a training / facilitator. And then at the end of this, Patty is going to help us and shape what the future is going to be for us in our work with you guys as trainers and facilitators in your circuit. Again, thank you for being here, and obviously I want to recognize the training team from the state office for their help putting all of this together. So Mary Kay, take it away, or Patty.
Yeah, I think I'm up next.
Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Well, I'm sorry, Mary Kay, go ahead.
If anybody does have any questions or any kind of comments, please feel free to type them in the questions or the chat box. And we will make sure to address them. If we don't get to it at the end of the webinar, then we will, we're recording this, and we will be able to get your question and be able to respond to it. Just wanted you to know that as we go along. Okay, Patty, you're back.
Righty, thanks. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Several months ago, we conducted a survey that I think many of you participated in. We had at least one person from every circuit reply. The results gave us a snapshot of basically how you handle training in your circuits, which was a goal of the survey. But the other thing was that we wanted to hear from you as far as what you needed from us as your training team. And also, we put some emphasis on seeking the challenges and things that you felt you were doing well in your circuit, sharing those with us. And Calvin's going to be leading a little bit of a discussion about challenges and best practices in a little bit. So the survey was extremely helpful to us, and really that's why we're here. Because if you look at the results, this is just one question. I'm not going to go through the entire survey because, like I said, most of it was just to give us information on how you do what you do. But this question, which was question 8, was asking what we can provide to you all to assist you with your responsibilities. So as you can see, other was the largest percentage of people had their own ideas about how we could assist, which was great. But we did also get, strong support for having conference calls or webinars like we're doing today, instructional webinars, and specific trainings on specific topics. None of you were really charmed with the idea of having a one-on-one call with us. That's okay. You didn't hurt our feelings. And many of you thought, or well, not a lot of you thought, but some of you thought that having a combination of the top three would work as well. So the next slide shares with you the ideas that everyone had. And training for CAMs was one that you thought that was something that was really important and something that we could help with. And as you just heard from Frank, that's exactly what's going to happen. Providing CASA training manuals and is something that even if you're not going to get the actual manual, obviously, Mary Kay is going to walk it through with you as far as, what the new CASA training is all about and how we're going to implement that. But we definitely are going to be creating materials and, providing different ways for the training to be implemented, as Frank just shared with you. Wanting quarterly trainer conference calls. Well, they might be a little bit more frequent than quarterly to get us off and running, but that is what we've started today and we plan to continue. So in other words, we heard you, we listened, and we're going to move forward on a lot of your suggestions. Statewide standard training materials, that's something that we will achieve with how we are going to be developing our training from this point forward, is that there will be standard training materials available for you so that we can provide consistency in our training. Because one thing that I heard too in the survey was that you'd like to make it easier for guardians when they move between counties in our state to be able to be certified in that county, or to start being a guardian in their new county without having to go through a lot of additional training, perhaps just training on the local components. You'll know that they got the same training that you delivered. Regional webinars on specific topics. Again, we do want to hear from you. If there's other topics that we're not covering that you really feel that we should or that are needed, we want you to be able to reach out to us and share that with us, because we're your training team. We do not want to just operate in a vacuum. We want to get feedback and input from all of you. I think that's really all I have to share at this point. I'll be coming back around at the very end and talking about how we're going to move forward. So now I think we turn it back to Mary Kay.
Thanks, Patty. So we did want to give you an update regarding the status of pre-service training development. And just to begin with, I can just tell you, Patty and myself want to say thank you to everybody for your patience with the independent study. We had heard such great favorable comments regarding it, and then we all went through the growing pains of it not always working the way we wanted it to work. So we would like to give a huge shout out to Circuit 12, who was able to help provide a short-term remedy for those issues that folks were having, which were sometimes the videos wouldn't load or the certificates wouldn't complete. So I want to say it was their volunteer, Bob Merrill, who was able to convert the slides to Google Slides. And since we have been able to link with that, we have not had near the issues that we were having. So thank you all for your patience. And thank you especially again to Circuit 12. We really appreciate your willingness to share that information. All right, so with the pre-service, this past summer, National CASA rolled out an updated pre-service curriculum. So I want to say it was like about a 10-year span between when the last big, huge update that National CASA had made. They had made some changes here and there, but the last really big one, it was about 10 years in the making, 7 to 10 years. So with this new curriculum, it merges a lot of the old National CASA curriculum in with some new innovative information. And in particular, what the National CASA pre-service is looking at is the best practice skills that are required to promote learning for the volunteers. And what it also does is the curriculum brings the challenges of the volunteer road to life by applying the real life case scenarios that are really, really, really good, that you can follow from one chapter to the next. And what those do is they help to really build the values and skills for the volunteers. So along those lines, with another big component to the National CASA curriculum is a particular focus on the facilitators that are delivering the material to grow as training professionals. Also, another shout out, I get to do all the shout outs, so I'm happy. Calvin, our very own Calvin Martin, was co-chair of the Curriculum Development Committee for the National CASA pre-service curriculum, and the material truly is very well written. We really like a lot of components of it, and they will improve upon the current pre-service that we have. But what we do have to point out is the way the National CASA curriculum is drafted is it's drafted for classroom training only, and we really, well, other than the pre-work. But the classroom training, we really want it to be incorporated into our 3-phase model that we're currently using. So a decision has been made to not solely use the National CASA curriculum, as we're just not able to deploy it in a manner that would work as written across our state and with our current resources. So all of that being said, to say that there are so many aspects to the National CASA curriculum that we will incorporate into our own Florida pre-service training, which we are updating. And it's everything from updated videos to scenarios to specific content, updated information. So we will be incorporating that into our new pre-service. Let me switch the slide. So what we are currently developing is it's aimed at meeting requests made by volunteers, requests made by you in surveys, and other guardian ad litem staff, and also by Alan. So the expectation is that we will have about 30 to 32 total pre-service hours, and that will be regardless of the format selected. And I'm going to explain what I mean when I say the format selected. So there will be options for pre-service training that will include a complete online component. So it will incorporate what is currently independent study and the classroom training. And the one area that we're trying to figure out on that particular focus right now is it will still be necessary to have that fieldwork component, because we think that's so important to be able to observe courtroom training and to go to the different meetings and to really get a feel for being a volunteer before they're assigned their first case. The second way is all classroom training. And so that would be that all components developed will be able to be presented in a classroom setting. And some people love this and some people hate it. And what I think you're going to see is that there are going to be options that your circuit can decide how best to deliver this material. Because what we're seeing is that as we move forward with technology and the advancements, and based on the location of volunteers, classroom training may not always be the ideal way to present material, but it will be an option. And so this is particularly, I think, as we go along, if you have volunteers that really need that face-to-face instruction for whatever reason, the classroom training will be available. Then we will also have virtual classroom training, and that's exactly what it means. It's going to be online sessions that are presented across the state by guardian ad litem training facilitators. And so we'll have like a master calendar, and they'll be able to go onto the Academy website and can see when pre-service would start or when a particular classroom training, virtual classroom training would begin. And so, for example, Carol Ann, I'm going to pick on you if you're on the call. So let's say Carol Ann Fisher in Circuit 14 would be willing to provide training on one of the chapters. She would be the designated training facilitator and then run that session for volunteers from circuits all across the state at that one time, not just those in Circuit 14. So this is, in order for this particular style of training to really be a success, we're just going to have to make it tight. It's going to be imperative that we develop strong processes for implementation. It will require training on delivering the material online, pre-registration of attendees, knowledge of the virtual classroom being used, for example, if we're using like GoToWebinar or what have you. So for this particular component, just stay tuned, if you will, on how it will be implemented, because it will be a while before that happens. But if you want to, please let us know if you would have an interest in being a virtual classroom facilitator, so that as we're moving on, we can go ahead and get you a part of the team with learning the different ropes that we're learning. So just wanted to put that out there. And then the fourth and most likely way that circuits may opt to continue to present training is the 3-tier method for certification. And so what that would be is pre-work. And so where it used to be independent study, we're going along with National CASA, and they do what's called pre-work prior to each chapter. So a majority of this information that we would ask volunteers to complete before they go into the classroom will be coming from the National CASA curriculum, and then we'll be making those necessary modifications to meet Florida-specific needs. Then we will have the classroom training, same as now, that will be focused on 8 chapters, and then we will still have the field work. So those are the 4 different pre-service training options that we are looking at. And what you can expect from us with all of this to happen is, I can tell you as a trainer myself, I need that guide. I like having a guide that explains to me what my expectation is as a trainer and what's going to come next. And so you will have facilitator guides, and it will be exactly what people have asked for, in that the material that will be presented in a classroom setting will identify everything that needs to happen. The prep work, whether you need to get handouts ready, or what posters should be made, or what videos need to be cued where, that will be a part of the facilitator guide. It will have specific training content to share, so we'll have a narrative, so you don't have to go, what do I say here? It will also have the PowerPoints and suggested icebreakers or other activities that go along with that specific section of the material. And then we will also, in the facilitator guide, reference specific volunteer handouts. So whatever you have will be able to work hand in hand with the volunteer manuals. So that takes me to the volunteer manuals. And these will be able to be printed as you decide for your volunteers. They can look at them online or print, but they will be able to follow along with your presentation in the classroom. So they'll walk out with a complete volunteer manual that goes across the state, whether they're in Circuit 1 or Circuit 4 or whichever circuit they may be. Everybody will be getting the exact same volunteer manual across the state. And then you can enhance it as you need to for like local protocols or what have you, like if you have, so that they know which CVC they work with in that circuit, for example. We also will have, for each chapter, specific PowerPoints, case scenarios, and videos that will be incorporated, so that while you can still enhance with your own circuit-wide information, statewide, everyone will have the same content to present. Another thing that we're excited about is that for the online courses, that courses came out totally wrong, but for online courses, narration will be available. And so what is exciting about this, not just that narration will be available to make sure that we're meeting all the requirements for ADM, but it's that each circuit will be able to identify someone they would like to represent them as a narrator. And so as we complete chapters of the material, whether it is pre-service or in-service, elective, whatever it may be, we will be able to get with that individual to record the material. And we see this as being a way we all have ownership of pre-service development and delivery, as well as in-service development and delivery. And it also will introduce the volunteers to the many different voices that they will encounter in the Guardian Ad Litem program. So there's a lot that we're working on to get all of this developed, and our expectation is rollout to occur in 2018. So as of now, we're just continuing as is with the 3 phases of pre-service training. You have the independent study that they go to the website for, the classroom, and the fieldwork components. And we will talk further about moving forward prior to this call ending and what will be involved from all of us. If you have any specific questions, I think somebody did, so let me check real quick before I turn the, let me make sure. I have a question. What is the pre-work from CASA planning to roll out to circuits? For that particular one, we're taking each chapter that CASA has for their pre-service curriculum. They are having the volunteers complete each before they go into the classroom. And so For example, the first chapter is on basically the introduction of the volunteer role, and we're adding in a legal component to it, which is the path of a case and what have you. So we will be asking the volunteers to complete that before they go into coming to a classroom setting, or before they go online to complete that particular chapter. So it's just kind of like pre-work, if you will. It's not homework, but it's something to get them prepared for the classroom. So hopefully that was able to answer your question there. Let's see. The particular chapters that we're looking at for pre-service is that we will have, currently what we're looking at is 8 pre-service chapters introducing the guardian ad litem volunteer role. We'll have a specific chapter on cultural competency. There will be one on well-being of the child. We'll have the 4th one is trauma, resilience, and communication skills. We'll look at mental health, poverty, and professional communication. We will still have educational advocacy in there. We're including Optima. We spoke with Alan about this, and he would like to make sure that we're looking at Optima from a statewide perspective, like the critical key components of it. And then each circuit, of course, will then be able to how best they need to present the material, but we will be exploring Optima so that they know that that is our online case management system. And then our last one will be a wrap-up that will have next steps in the advocacy piece. Another component to this is because looking at it from an academy perspective, not every volunteer will be exposed to the exact same thing. So let's say that we have a volunteer that, based on their experience or what they will be working on, they may say, I want any case that involves domestic violence because I used to work in that field, or any case that works on substance abuse. They will take those particular courses. They will select which elective, basically, that they will take and complete. And then as they move on in their advocacy, they will then be able to add additional electives to their training, maybe on normalcy, or the first 1,000 days of a child in care, quality parenting initiative, permanency, psychotropic medication. All of those different types of courses they will then be able to also take. So the volunteers will select from a list of course options that are available online to complete, and that would be focusing them on their specific needs as a volunteer. So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing currently, what we're developing, and what you can expect from us. So keep us on our toes. If we're not giving you that specific information. As a trainer, I would want the guide myself. That's the most important thing. So that's what we're really trying to make sure, that it's going to be a clean, professional, well-made material that really follows the National CASA curriculum with some enhancement that looks at Florida needs.
Mary Kay,
Yeah.
Mary, if I may add just a couple of quick things. Number one, the whole idea behind the electives is something that we've been thinking about for some time. If you have a case that, and let's say you have a volunteer who only likes to work with older youth, so our focus in terms of how we train that volunteer needs to be very different from how we train a volunteer who likes to work only with the younger children. And that's what the electives are going to aim at doing. So for example, if you got a volunteer who wants to work with the older youth, we're going to provide to them training on independent living and, you know, things that they need to consider as the child, you know, graduates from high school, you know, as they go out on their own, as they're getting ready to age out, or the extended foster care process, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to be more specific to the needs of the children that they're going to be working with, and of course that training is going to be available in online on the web. And so even as you progress, if you're a CAM and you've got a volunteer who's always worked with younger children, and for some reason now they want to maybe, you know, change and they want to work with an older child, then we can give them the a link to the training that they need to go and complete. So it's more specific to the advocacy that they're providing. If you've got a a child who may be abusing substances. You know, we may have a training that is targeting how to deal with that. So we're going to be focusing more on specific needs and have this repertoire of trainings online for our volunteers to take advantage of. And then the second thing that I wanted to add on to what Mary Kay was talking about is, regardless of which platform you choose, whether your circle is doing the 3-tier training, the online training, the online webinar training, either way, at the end of the training, and what we're going to be looking at doing is the number of hours that we are going to be providing is probably going to be, and we're not sure yet, probably going to be somewhere between 24 to 26 total hours. And then we are going to basically create a guide for each circuit to cover circuit-specific issues. So, you want to mention who your CBC is. You want to be mentioning who the case management organizations are. And all these things, how your judge runs the courtroom may be different from how a judge in Jacksonville runs the courtroom. So, we're going to give the circuits a little bit more flexibility in terms of that specific circuit content. And we're going to be creating a guide and an outline of the things that we want the circuits to develop internally to bring that local flavor onto the training. So even at the end of our statewide curriculum, we're going to turn them over to you guys for you guys to deliver that independent and individual, circuit-specific curriculum. Thanks, Mary Kay.
Sorry, I was still on mute. Absolutely. Thank you, Frank, for adding that information. And I looked over the questions, and I think, Melvin, I misinterpreted your question initially. It was, when would they roll out? Everything will be rolling out in 2018. We're looking at not late 2018, but like the pre-work will be coming out when we're ready for the whole training to be delivered. So right now we're not doing the pre-work. They won't be doing the pre-work right now. It will only be once we get everything ready at one time to deliver. So if I made that even more confusing, I apologize. But it's basically, as we're ready for pre-service with this new material, pre-work will be ready, then they will do the classroom session. All right, Calvin, I am going to transfer it on over to you if you don't mind, sir.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Mary Kay. One of the things that we wanted to do as part of this presentation was to give you guys an opportunity to kind of talk about some of the great things that you all as trainers have been doing. One of the things that we do know that can definitely improve our skill sets is sharing through best practices, which I think as a program we could do a better job of talking about more of and sharing across circuit boundaries. And one of the things that we also look at is a lot of us are doing some really good things as far as it comes to training, how we prepare, how we execute the training, but we may not necessarily think what we're doing is a great thing until somebody else kind of hears about it and talks about it, and you're able to share some of the components of what you do. So one of the things we wanted to do was take a little bit of time and bring up probably one or two different aspects of some of the things that we do well as a program as far as training goes. And then also we could have an opportunity to kind of talk about a challenge or two. So with that in mind, for today, purpose of today, I did talk with some folks that I feel that I've been aware of that have done some quality work over the past year or so, and I've asked them to kind of share their thoughts and an example of something that they have been doing fairly well within their program. So I kind of want to start with Judy out of the 6th Circuit and ask Judy if you could tell us about a best practice that you've done in your neck of the woods as a trainer?
Hey, Calvin, thanks. Yeah, I think we did some pretty cool things here in the Sixth Circuit. I think relationships are really important for engaging and keeping volunteers. So, of course, the volunteers meet the trainer or the recruiter first. And from the recruiter, they start to bond. And then when we start the training, the recruiter comes to the first class of training. It's kind of like a handoff now from the recruiter to the trainer. So that you meet the trainer, start bonding with the trainer. And at the same time, we're thinking office-wise, so we want them to start to know some of the CAMs. So the second through the last class, a couple CAMs will come to each class and talk just a couple minutes each, because, you know, they like to talk, and just introduce themselves, talk a little bit about themselves, maybe a little bit about their cases. So the trainees get to understand the class or the office culture and see how things are going. And I think they really enjoy that. And one of the favorite nights of our class is when we bring master guardians in. If we have, say, 20 people in class, we'll have 4 of them come in. They'll break into little groups, and they'll talk to the class. They'll talk maybe about 20 minutes and then rotate. The class likes to ask them things that they don't like to ask the trainer, because for some reason there are some questions they don't like to ask us. So they'll ask the guardian who comes in, and the guardian will tell them about their cases and some of the challenges they had and some of the good things, because, you know, sometimes it's kind of tough. Those hard things have to get you through, or the good parts have to get you through the hard times. Another thing we do is we have someone from licensing and case management come in and talk to the volunteers and talk about how homes are licensed and what's it like a day in the life of a case manager and how hard it is for them. And then they can ask them questions firsthand. What's the best way to communicate? What if something happens? Who do I call? So I think those are some of the good things we do to build relationships, and I think they've worked really well for us.
Excellent, excellent. Julie, thank you so much. In particular, when you talked about the Master Guardians and how you rotate, how you break that that group of prospective volunteers up, and you have the Master Guardians rotate through each of those groups. I think that was a very brilliant technique, which actually gives each volunteer group different perspectives outside, within their own group environment. So I really like that practice. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Judy. I also asked one other circuit to kind of share some of the good things that they've been doing in their area. In particular, this trainer has come on board with us for the past couple of years, and she's been in her role now for well over a year, I believe, but she's done some incredible things, and I asked her to share some of that with us. So Lauren, if you're able, I would like for you to just tell us a little bit about some of the good things that you've been doing in your neck of the woods.
Thank you, Calvin. Hi, everybody. Kind of in Circuit 7, one of our unique kind of challenges is just how geographically spread our different counties are. So over the last year, we've really been trying to kind of get a lot of our basic core courses, if you will, standardized, and have come up with like curriculum or PowerPoints to go along with several different topics that we can deliver consistently throughout the circuit. So we've built some different trainings in regards to report writing, our peer mentorship training, post-PPR advocacy. And one of the things we've also kind of done consistently throughout the circuit is come up with some training regarding Optima. And we found that it's been really effective in terms of our Optima training to be able to kind of separate and provide 2 different levels of training for our guardians and for our staff. So with that, we've done an Optima level 1 training, which is kind of an introduction to the basics, and has I've got a kind of talking points that we go through, just introducing the volunteers to Optima as a whole. And then what we've also done is create an Optima level 2 training. We've got one that we've done with guardians, and then a separate Optima level 2 training that we've done with staff to try to make sure that everybody kind of knows all of the ins and outs of Optima and is able to get more utility after they're comfortable with just kind of the basic operations. So how we've been able to do that, specifically for the level 2 trainings, is we come up with kind of some general topics that we want to talk about. So for the volunteers, level 2 training, we did contact logs and documents, how to use the search function, and how to add pertinent information to the case shell. And then we open up the level 2 session with 20 minutes of brainstorming, and any questions or problems that they've had, we kind of try to lump those together into similar categories so that we can get through all of the issues at once. And then for our staff development, like I said, with the standardizing the training, we've done kind of quarterly trainings with our CAMs here where we're trying to help them kind of tackle issues that they're encountering on a day-to-day basis. So with the staff level 2 Optima training, we ran that kind of similar to the Guardian ad litem level 2 training, where we had different subject areas that we knew we wanted to cover, and opened up 20 minutes to brainstorming for CAMs to discuss any problems or challenges that they've had in Optima. So for the CAM training, we had different subject areas of connecting with new guardians, how to use that initial application, how to search case preferences. We had a topic of managing their guardians, how to place a volunteer on leave, how to document training issues, talking about how to approve contact and training logs. We had a section all about children and how to close a case, first closing a child, how to add information on school, case managers, and placements. And then we also had a quick reference guide that we've created for the reports. And so we talked about what reports our CAMs could be pulling weekly, monthly to help them be more effective with their advocacy, and the steps kind of to walk through to pull the different various reports for what they were looking for. And then for both of the trainings we called a parking lot, and any questions that came up during the training we would place in the parking lot to make sure that we addressed those at the end. So Optima, because it's so important to what we're doing in an advocacy in terms of our day-to-day use of it, we created those to just try to help everybody be a little bit more comfortable with the system and make sure that as issues arise, that we were able to address those one-on-one with the folks that were encountering them.
Excellent, excellent. Lauren, thank you so much. In particular, I really love the idea of the 2-level structure that you guys employed for Optima training with your volunteers. And believe me, I've actually seen it in action. And for those of you who may have had challenges regarding Optima training your volunteers with Optima, I think Lauren is a good asset. They've really solidified this 2-level process, and I definitely encourage you to give her a call if you definitely would like to get some pointers on beefing up your Optima training practices. So, Lauren, Judy, thank you very much. I do want to talk just briefly about potential circuit challenges, and this is something that I'm going to explore further as we move into facilitation training over the next couple of months. But one of the things that I think that circuits, in my travels across circuits, and one of the biggest challenges that they've had is really dealing with difficult volunteers. And I say that, with tongue in cheek, but when I say dealing with difficult volunteers, it's more talking about the volunteer or prospective volunteer that comes into a training that kind of takes over your training. It's the volunteer that kind of is loud, that kind of begins to take over the mindset of the group as a whole, and become dominant, provided if you do nothing to kind of stir that mindset away. And and also this could be the volunteer that may potentially challenge you as a presenter or as a trainer at times. And I think we probably see this more in circuits where if the trainer is probably newer to the program, if it's, say, a CAM that doesn't have a ton of training experience in how to deal with difficult people. And I think that sometimes it's like a shark that smells blood in the water, and particularly these volunteers with a certain mentality. These can be potentially your best volunteers because they're very strong advocates, but you go through a learning process as we deal with them out of the gate and preparing them to become child advocates for the program. And so one of the ways that we sometimes offset that is pretty much going out and bringing in, utilizing subject matter experts, or even using different methods like a step up, step back approach to having that you set the standard at the very beginning of the training to ask volunteers if you're the type of a volunteer that likes to talk a lot, we're going to ask that you step back at times. And for those that don't talk as much, we're going to ask for you to step up. And so that's something I am going to definitely explore more in depth as we go through facilitation training. And we're going to talk specifically on how to deal with that particular challenge. So with that said, Mary Kay, go to the next slide. And speaking of facilitation, we're gonna, as part of what we're going to be doing as a group, we are going to explore and focus a lot on facilitation. A lot of times folks think about themselves more as trainers, and you probably see yourselves as trainers, but really in essence, we are facilitating the material that we have as far as our volunteer pre-service training. And there are a number of skill sets that I feel that will truly help beef up you getting over certain challenges that may come up at certain points, depending on really no matter what structure you have in your training process. I think that what we're gonna discuss, and particularly as a group, will help, I think, form how you better approach a group of folks, how you better transition certain topics from one area to another, how you better take on those hard level topics and create an environment for conducive learning. And so one of the very first things out of the gate that we're going to talk about is the difference between you as a trainer versus you as a facilitator. And so that will be in looking at the role for both of those. So this is just a very brief example and introduction to that. So with that said, without getting into it any further, I'm going to go ahead and turn it to my other partner in crime, who's going to kind of talk a little bit about what we're going to be, how we're going to look moving forward, and what that's going to kind of look like. So, Patty.
Okay, thanks, Calvin. That's great. Well, I hope everyone's as excited as we are. I mean, we are in this together. So, and there's a lot of work to be done, but I know that we have the talent and the resources to accomplish everything that Frank set out for us at the beginning of this webinar. So moving forward, we're going to, on a monthly basis, the second Wednesday at noon. So the next one would be on November 8th. Calvin is going to be taking the lead on training facilitator skills webinars. And he just gave you a little sneak peek of some of the things that he's going to be talking about. But this is just to, increase your skill set, your competencies, and for you to all, be able to grow as facilitators. So his first, on November 8th, he's going to be covering an introduction to developing facilitation skills. And if I'm wrong with that, Calvin, you can correct me, but I believe it's going to be an introduction to developing facilitation skills. Now, in addition to those webinars, when we get to the point where we're ready to roll out the new pre-service chapters, or for that matter, down the pike as we roll out, elective trainings, although that's part of pre-service, but we do, at the same time, we are working on different topics to be included in I Am for the Child Academy, in-service trainings. We will have webinars scheduled to go over those chapters with you all so that utilizing the skills and competencies you've learned about with Calvin, you'll be able to then implement those and see how they'll be obviously very helpful to you as we roll out the new chapters. So those webinars will most likely be occurring obviously after the first of the year. So those are the two big things, but what we really, I'm asking all of you to think about too are trainings that you feel in your circuit. I'm sure you're proud of some trainings that you all have developed in some of these areas that we've talked about. So please share. Let us know if you think that you've got just an amazing piece that you do on, the overview of the child welfare system, for instance. Anything that you have that you would like to share with us that we can take a look at, we'd like to see that. also any topic suggestions you might have that can be incorporated into these webinars, something that you'd really like us to cover. And again, any questions that you might have. You can see here on this slide that we've created a email address just for training. So just for training questions, training suggestions, etc. The training team, we can all access that email, and then we can respond to you. And you can send those at any time. It doesn't have to just be after the webinar or before a webinar, but anytime you have something that pops up that you need to discuss or would like to discuss. So please avail yourself of that. And I think that we just have a few minutes left. So I don't know, Frank, did you want to wrap it up?
Trying to get myself off of mute.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, I just really want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon, and I'm really, if you've got any feedback for us, please feel free to share that feedback with us. I mean, this is all about making something that is going to be useful to you guys and help you do your jobs better. And it's also an opportunity for you to help your peers. So the only way that we're going to get there is if you guys share, if you guys are willing to put yourself out there and let us know the great things that you're doing, or maybe in some cases things that you're struggling with, so that we can help you overcome that. But it is about you guys, and it is about helping you help us become a better program. So with that being said, thank you all for joining us today, and I really appreciate the great work that Calvin, Mary Kay, Patty, and the rest of the training team has done putting this together for us. And thank you for being here with us this afternoon.
Okay, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Hey, Kelly.
Hey.
Hey, will you be able to shut us down?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Will you be able